Welcome to Two-Sentence Horror. As a single father, I was relieved when I received the call that my daughter had survived the plane crash, and I rushed to the hospital to see her. But when she said "Dada" and ran to me, I saw that she was horribly disfigured. So I shook my head, pushed her away, and told the officer that it wasn't her. When my brother died, I adopted his dog and cared for it as if it was my own, even when it took time for the pup to snap out of its grief-stricken trance. But when I undressed in front of the dog for the first time, and it lumbered towards me as if trained, I began to have horrific doubts about my brother's relationship with his pup. I chuckled as I read the Reddit QOTD. If you were to die based on your username, how would you go out? My laughter subsided as the familiar throbbing pain in my head quickly returned. When my dad forgot where he put the wrench, everyone stopped and stared. Once deemed incompetent in the bunker, you were put to use as much needed protein for the remaining survivors. My newlywed wife playfully smeared icing across my cheek, so in return I had smashed her face into the rest of our cake. When she went limp, I pulled her towards my chest only to see a skewer through her eye. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at the stamped 95 on my paper. As my family looked on sadly, I shuffled into the sub-100 IQ line, knowing what was coming next for me. A free brain chip that can fix blindness was a dream come true for millions. Until you couldn't pay the sudden monthly fees, then the things they made you see would make you wish you couldn't. I told my therapist I watched a girl drown when I was 15. I could have saved her, but I was too scared. I know, she said as she got up to lock the door. That was my daughter. My brother never hid his hatred towards me, but surprisingly, when I needed an urgent kidney transplantation, he didn't hesitate to donate to me. Unfortunately, even after my surgery, my medical problems weren't over yet, since my depression and self-hate got much worse, as I started to be overwhelmed with suicidal thoughts. "Mom, you've got to stop Tommy from turning into a vampire," my daughter cried frantically as she ran into the room. I stared at her dumbfounded until she added, "He got bit by a bat last week, but he made me promise not to tell anyone." The engineered bacteria able to convert iron into gold was hailed as a marvel of modern science, realizing the dream of ancient alchemists. Then the lab spill allowed them out into the water, and now they are in our blood, and it is only a matter of time. "It's a boy!" he screamed with delight as the doctor revealed the results. I never cared which sex my offspring was, but my heart sank as I remembered how many times he drove me to the clinic in order to receive this result. Trade my children's lives to the devil for $1 million. Each was the second best decision of my life, but the best one was choosing to become a sperm donor a couple years earlier. I had just started learning to read lips, so when my mother knelt in front of me, she made sure to mouth the words very slowly. "If you keep this behavior up, I'll take your eyes away next." If someone starts cussing on the phone, I immediately hang up on them. In just 3 short years, I'll be a retired 911 dispatcher. I couldn't hide the disappointment in my eyes as I held my crying newborn daughter. I turned to my wife where she lay strapped to the bed, let the girl fall to the floor, and unzipped my pants as I said, "Let's hope lucky number 7 brings us a boy." After the zombie apocalypse and living with no electricity for months, finding a house with a gassed-up generator was a blessing. "It'll be too noisy outside and attract zombies," my partner reasoned. "Let's set it up inside and sleep with air conditioning." When my daughter woke up from her 5-month-long coma with amnesia, I vowed to help her remember exactly who she was before she lost her memories. Of course, I was careful to avoid mentioning anything that might make her remember that shortly before her coma, she began telling me that she was a boy. My wife has ruined my life for so long that I've finally hired a hitman. As we sit having lunch, I see him approach and smile, knowing that she'll never be able to forget my exploding face. I was puzzled as to why my son had left his phone at home while it said it was calling an unknown number. I broke down crying when the hold music stopped, and I heard, "Hello, suicide prevention hotline, my name is Joe. In what ways can I assist you? The note read, "Please make sure that the cats are fed, their water is changed often, and that they get plenty of love." "A bit late for that," I whispered, as the paramedics lowered the body of my brother down from the ceiling fan, his feet having been chewed down to mangled stumps. My 16-year-old daughter wouldn't stop crying during her supposed best friend's funeral. As much as I know it hurts her right now, I think deep down she knows that I'm only looking out for her, and that she should settle for a nice young man instead. I've invited all my friends and family to a steak dinner who said my allergies are not that important issue. Holding the vial of Lone Star ticks in my hand, I know I could change some of their opinions. Despite the shock and grief I was in, I managed to sign the paperwork that gave the doctors permission to harvest the organs of my now dead son. Had I known that a clerical error would make it so my son's heart ended up in the chest of the drunk driver who killed him, I never would have done it. My 4-year-old acted fast when she realized her skirt was on fire, working quick to douse the flames. When I discovered her still clutching the melted bottle of rubbing alcohol in her charred hands, I would have given anything to go back in time and teach her that not all liquids put out fire. Everyone at the park watched in horror as I tripped while wearing my newborn, crushing her instantly. The witnesses were able to corroborate my story, deeming it an accident. "I found it!" I exclaimed, grabbing the doll my daughter had been asking for off the store shelf. I turned around to hand it to her, only to see an empty cart. 3 days of hard labor for breaking my fence, the strange man said, and I hesitantly agreed. When I was done, I found myself in the middle of the forest, 10 years older, and at the edge of a ring of mushrooms I'd apparently stepped on. They say that the soul cannot rest until the body is given a proper burial. As my body lay on the unforgiving, frigid slope for centuries, I began to regret ever wanting to climb Mount Everest. You have never seen your classroom so still, nor your class so well behaved. 30 faces swivel to face you as you enter, 30 sets of eyes fill with fear and confusion, and one exact copy of you already stands at the blackboard.